We have a fantastic program. I'm very excited to introduce you all to Galvanize Action. Um, but I'll get to that in a minute. Thank you for all renewing members. Thank you for all guests being here. If there's any electeds or candidates, please wave your hand. And we're going to do questions at the end. So as we're going through the presentation, if you have a question, put it in the chat. And then Tina and Wei, our masterminds behind the scene, will kind of collate them and then make sure that we cover as many as we can. And likely there'll be similar questions, so we'll just make sure we get those bigger topics covered. Our March meeting will be Representative Jason Crow. He'll be talking to us about the state of our democracy. I'm sure we can ask him about how he's handling the attacks from Trump, about his video from like a few months ago regarding people not obeying illegal orders. And then we'll close up with BOCO Dems Chair Ben Cowan. He will come in and give us a recap on caucus and assembly. He won't necessarily have final results, but he'll give you a feel for how things went and how many people showed up, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'll make that also a pitch to make sure you attend your caucus and get involved in your precinct. That is where you can be elected as your precinct organizer if you want. It's great when people know their neighbors and get involved and encourage everybody to participate in some way or another. I think that's kind of all the business stuff. Let me just check this real quick. Okay. All right. So for Galvanize, our program tonight's called From Insight to Impact, What Moderate Women Are Telling Us and Where We Go Next. Galvanize Action is a nationally recognized firm that connects with moderate women to build a broader base for progress and an America that works for everyone. Their presentation will cover how ideologically moderate women experience the social, cultural, and political landscape in 2025 and what they need to play an active role in supporting our democracy and each other. We're going to learn about how they feel about the current administration. At least this was back in December. What their red lines are and what their daily struggles are, and that impact on civic engagement. Jackie Payne is who will be doing the presentation and talking with us afterwards. Is the founder and executive director of Galvanize USA, Galvanize Action, and the One for All committee, where she's connecting with moderate women to promote civic engagement, combat disinformation, and increase pro-social, pro-democracy behavior. She has developed scientific expertise with women in suburban, rural, and small town communities, and with white women, the single largest voting bloc in this country. So, Wei, if you are ready to begin the presentation, you can take it from here.
Does that look good from your end?
Yes.
Okay. I will press play and let me know if you don't hear any sound.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Many of you know I started Galvanize Action because back in 2016, I became increasingly alarmed by the rise in authoritarianism and the threat to democracy in the United States. I recognized that moderate women were a key audience to engage and learned that there was a real gap in the field when it came to meaningful engagement with this group to support them to align their civic choices with their values. Over the last 7 years, our team has been doing a truly innovative work informed by data science, neuroscience, and behavioral psychology to deeply understand moderate women, and particularly moderate white women, who are both targeted by and vulnerable to authoritarian propaganda and tactics. We have become the leading experts in persuading this audience, having learned what moves them, what holds them back, and how to earn their trust by providing content they crave, return to, and ultimately act on. Our award-winning research team and our programming has proven that our approach of delivering powerful, persuasive content through both paid ads and always-on cultural content works to move this audience. And so that's the sort of short answer to why Galvanize and what we do. And let's get into the moment we're in. I am not going to belabor this, but we are absolutely absolutely in the midst of an authoritarian takeover. We have seen every single a box on this list of authoritarianism checked this year. Sometimes it feels kind of bananas to say that. It feels like it's hard to believe, but it is also undeniable that that's where we are in America today. And history tells us we have a very short window of persuasion to convince folks to turn away from this, to defy it, to defect, and to join us in supporting our democracy. And so that really is the work over the next 12 to 18 months to strike in this window and to move the masses with us. Most of today is going to be focused on Galvanize Action, our C4 political work, but I just want to pause for one moment to celebrate with all of us. Galvanize USA reached a key milestone just the other day. So we were able to reach our 2025 goal of having 1 million subscribers to our Galvanize Together programming. This is a key milestone in our journey to become a cultural force in the lives of 24 million ideologically moderate women over the next 5 years. And we didn't just get women to subscribe. We kept them coming back for more with really popular and persuasive content. If you've been with us for a while, you've heard about our advice column, Dear Grace, and you've watched our community conversations that women in our audience join and love to watch. We have been delivering what they crave, what they return to, and the content that allows us to authentically offer the messages that our research shows they need to hear to build up the confidence and agency to vote in line with their values. This year, Galvanize USA pivoted from providing this content how we were doing it previously we used to do just via text, SMS and MMS. We would send to this million subscribers the content over text. This year, we're continuing to do that, but this year we moved more of that content to where they're spending more of their time online, growing our reach on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok. And that pivot this year is what's setting us up for exponential growth next year and beyond. So before we move into the really political work, I want to say to all of you who have been with us and supported this, I am so proud of these flagship programs, how popular they are with this audience and the impact they're having. And I want you to celebrate this impact with us. It's amazing that we did this together. Okay, I hope you clapped at home. I trust that you did. Now I'm going to pivot us and move us into a more political conversation. So let's begin, and I'm so sorry to take you back to 2024, but let's begin with reminding ourselves what happened in 2024. This time last year, we met and we gave you what we could see from the exit polls, what we thought happened based on imperfect exit polls. We now have verified voting data, and this chart is from the Pew Research Center. And what it shows is the movement that happened. So Trump defeated Harris by 1.5 percentage points. 4 years earlier, Biden won by 4.4 percentage points. That's nearly a 6-point swing towards Trump, right? And as you can see here, Democrats lost ground with nearly every single demographic compared to 2020. We saw a rightward movement by almost everybody. But in this data, there was a bright spot. White women shifted left compared to 2020 by 4 percentage points. And if you've been following along with us, you know that we have done in-field gold standard randomized control trials to show that our work contributed to this movement. We have successfully been able to persuade moderate white women to stand up for democracy and to understand who is better for them on the economy cycle after cycle now. So even though this was depressing and the turnout wasn't what we wanted, the good news is there was a bright spot and our work contributed to it. Okay, so that was the grounding. The other thing we looked at, in addition to this verified voting data, was the American National Election Study, ANES. And we looked at that our research team goes in and tries to really understand more about how moderate white women voted and to help us understand why and when. So the next slide shows you a little bit about the when. Most moderate white women made their decision well in advance of Election Day. 54% decided 6 months or more before the Election Day. And I want you to remember that because there's often a push towards just final days. All the persuasion happens at the very end. That's where most of the money is. That's when everyone sort of wakes up and says, oh, I'm going to give and support this election. 54% decided 6 or more months before. And for me, I'm really emphasizing that for you because it supports our belief that it is important to be talking to these voters early and often. They are making up their mind every day as they understand how the world is shaping around them. And we need to be part of that ongoing communication with them to help them make up their mind early. 28% did make up their choice in the final 2 months. So there is a meaningful minority that remains open to persuasion late in the cycle. I have no doubt that we're going to hit those folks with the amount of money that comes in at the very end to talk to those folks. But if you look, 54% decided 6 or more months before, and another 18% decided in the 3 to 5 months before Election Day. So it is crucial that we are set up and talking to these women well in advance of the fall. Our programming decisions are driven by insights like this that our research team gives us. It helps us understand that we need always-on programming for our audience. It is not an option to sit back and wait and try to come in at the end. In addition, we do regular pulse checks with our audience, and that allows us to stay on top of how are they feeling, what's breaking through, how are they making sense of both the current events, the political events that are happening, and when do we need to act to get involved with a persuasion effort over the course of the year. Okay, so this gives you a sense of where they were going into last year, into 2024. And now what I want to do is take you on a journey of what did we learn in 2025. If you don't love our research team as much as I do after this, I don't know what to tell you. They're amazing. One of the things that sets Galvanize apart is the deep and ongoing research that we do to understand how moderate women are making sense of things in a very fast-paced, rapidly changing social, cultural, and political landscape of 2025, right? We know folks are being flooded, and we also know that a lot of our audience is avoiding the news but having their views informed over social media. So what we're looking at is throughout the year, how are they making sense of that? What is most important to them, and how do they frame it and why? Over the course of the year, what we saw is their top issues stayed pretty consistent. The economy is always the number one issue. If you've been with us from the beginning, that is consistent. Economy is always number one. They are worried about how their family is doing, number one. Secondarily, we saw preserving democracy is the number 2 spot of most selected responses when they say, what's the most important issue facing this country? So moderate women are putting preserving democracy as their number 2. Healthcare, immigration, and crime move around slightly, but those are in the next set of things that are top of mind for our audience. So I want you to take away from this slide that what you've been hearing in this fall in the elections is correct. Affordability, economy is always number 1. And for moderate women, they do care about that economic security. They do care about democratic norms and institutions. And we're going to talk more about what that means to them. And then they're very concerned with the health and safety of their family. So let's dig a little bit deeper, and we'll go through each of those 3 buckets to understand how it shows up and what does it mean. So I'm going to start with the economy, their number 1 issue. When moderate women are identifying that as their top issue, they're talking about the economic security for themselves and their family. They're talking about price of groceries, price of rent, abilities to make ends meet, and inflation. When we are talking with moderate women, first of all, when we do our content, we always put them at the center, and we focus on what matters most to them, and we are addressing their concerns. We do not put Trump at the center of our work like some others do. We put our moderate women at the center, and we talk about them and what matters most to them. That helps us to address their real life concerns and help them to sort through who is to blame and who will have their backs. And if you look at our randomized control trials from last cycle, what you'll see is we were very successful at helping them to understand who had their back on the economy, and that is key to moving them. In this year's research in November, what we saw was 63% disapprove of the way President Trump is handling the economy. This is really striking, given that in the past, when we have when we've looked at this, we see moderate women tend to trust Republicans more than Democrats on the economy. So for them to really disapprove of President Trump in this way is important, and you see that showing up in the fall elections. I want to also note that in September we did a survey, and what we saw was 93% of moderate women expressed concern about tariffs, with 31% saying they're extremely concerned. And then I also want to point out another point about the economy. In June, we did a mid-year survey where we're deep diving on the economy with our audience, and nearly a quarter reported being unable to make ends meet at that time. That's super important as you hold in your head who our audience of moderate white women is, who we view as persuadable and who we're learning about. The majority do not have a four-year college degree, and the majority live in households under $100,000. And a quarter of them report being unable to make ends meet. It explains why the economy is number one and why that is their top issue. In that survey, most felt that large corporations were prioritizing profits over workers and were most responsible for the current state of the economy, with 74% saying that those large corporations are completely or mostly responsible. So when we're looking for who to blame for this, a piece of that is they're very unhappy with how Trump is handling the economy, and they're also very unhappy with our current system and how corporations are benefiting themselves over people, right? Okay, so now let's look at the next issue, democratic norms and institutions. Over the course of our research, what we've seen is it's important not to address democracy as an abstract ideal, but really how it impacts their lives and focus on what they hold dear. The way that democratic norms, the support for norms and institutions shows up, one way is by the focus on institutions that matter in their lives. For example, earlier this year, the administration was dismantling the Department of Education, and we asked moderate women about it, and over 2/3 said they oppose the president dismantling Department of Education, right? That's a thing that is a real issue in their lives and has an impact on their children and their loved ones. We also see the concern for democratic norms and institutions coming up as it ties to their core values of patriotism, freedom, and fairness, as well as when they relate to or touch on their desire for stability and safety for their family. We'll see that a little bit more in the additional research, but 88% of our audience said they were concerned about the president ignoring court orders and acting against judicial rulings, with almost 40% saying they were extremely concerned and another 21 very concerned. So it's a really deep concern about the president's using their executive power, overreaching and disregarding judicial rulings, right? So that you can see that tapping into what they hold dear, American patriotism, fairness, and the notion that can, if the law is thrown out, then like where is the stability that they desire? That can create chaos. Okay, I'm going to move on now to health and safety, and I'm actually going to split this into two different segments. So let's talk about health first, and then we'll talk about safety. So on health, healthcare is an issue that is very important to our audience, and it's fascinating to me because it's a place where they see themselves as having more progressive beliefs than others in their network. So we did this really cool deep dive ecosystem study where we asked them how they felt about an issue, and then how they felt their husband or husband felt about it, and then how they felt their friends and children thought about it. And healthcare was one of the ones where they placed themselves to the left of the folks around them. And it was listed in a different set of research that we did this year as a most inspiring issue. When we asked them, what makes you feel most connected to your bravest self, the version of you that feels ready to engage as an activist, healthcare is the thing that made them feel like they were willing to stand up and take action. So that's a really strong opportunity here to tap into that healthcare topic and help them identify what they, who has their backs and who doesn't. You can see that showing up in the whole conversation about the government shutdown and the way that Democrats focused on healthcare as a key issue. It's also, for our audience, very connected to the economy and affordability. 93, you see in this slide, 93% of our audience said they were concerned about potential cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. And within that, you see 41% extremely concerned, additional 25% very concerned. Healthcare is a huge part of folks' budgets. They are very worried about it, and they are motivated to do something about it. So it's a really strong prong to talk to our audience about. Now let's kind of look at the other side of health and safety. So if think about our audience, and what they want is for their family to be economically secure, healthy, and safe. That is the takeaway for you, right? So we've talked about economically secure, we've talked about health. Safety, we've talked a little bit about the way that the democratic norms and institutions, when those are violated, it makes things feel chaotic and unsafe. And then we also see another element of safety that's tied to immigration and crime. So President Trump has connected immigrants to crime. We've been watching this happen since 2016 in the way that he talked about building the wall, he lifts up immigrants as criminals. Even in the discussion this year about deporting folks, he alleged that he would go after those who were criminals. And when he does that, what that does is stoke fear of the other, which makes moderate women feel unsafe. This is a common authoritarian tactic to scapegoat the other so that folks are willing to look the other way or even support the erosion of rights and democratic norms in the name of safety. So that's what we're seeing happen in this country right now, with a cruel and devastating effect on communities. What we see in the data is that with moderate women, Trump is doing better on crime than on other issues with moderate women. But there is good news here too. So in our September survey, what we saw was that there is roughly a split between approval and disapproval for how Trump is handling crime. 49% approve, and 51% disapprove. What that tells you is that Trump is picking up some independents and folks outside of his base, feeling like he's doing a good job on crime. But the fact that it's split, it's not overwhelming support, it creates opportunity there. And as I said, we know that this disinformation, this propaganda that's being sent out to connect immigrants to crime is designed to instill fear and build support for these tactics, or at least get people to look away and not act. When we asked moderate women about some of the disinformation narratives in an immigration survey this year, what we saw was 30% report believing to some degree that immigrants commit more crimes than U.S. citizens. So we're seeing some of that propaganda work with about a third saying, I believe that immigrants commit more crimes than U.S. citizens. That's designed to make people turn down the heat and not be so worried when they see immigrants being deported, right? The good news here, a majority of women, moderate women that we interviewed, 71%, while they said that stronger border security was needed, mass deportation was not the solution for them. And so what you'll see here, and as we're seeing more deportations expand beyond people who would be viewed as criminals and into folks being picked up at daycares and at work, and like there's no reason to believe that they are the threat that's being alleged, you see that that's causing folks to be upset about what's happening and not support it. Looking at this data from throughout the year provides a really clear story for us about what our audience cares most about and what we need to be talking to them about, right? So if focus on economic security, health, and safety so that they feel like they and their family will be more safe and secure. And we saw that play out in the November elections. And I'll just name one particular point. When we looked at the exit poll data in Virginia and New Jersey, we saw that the Democratic candidates who focused on these issues won the voters who named the economy as their top issue by a huge margin, over 25 percentage points. So economy plus, you heard it here first. I'm going to move on. I want to talk about red lines. Throughout this year, we've also been asking our audience what their red lines are. And the specific question we asked was whether or not you think this would actually happen, which of the following actions would you consider a red line if the federal government did them? So in other words, if the government did these things, would you feel the need to speak out, protest, refuse to follow the law, or take other action? And then we said, please select all that apply. And what you're seeing here are the three that more than 50% of moderate white women identified as their red lines. So the first is allows the military to use deadly force against peaceful protesters, uses the justice system to jail political opponents without proof that they did anything wrong, and refuses to abide by lawful court orders and take unconstitutional action. We have seen a version of each of those things happen this year. So if this was moderate women's red lines, what have they done about it? Have they been taking action? How are they taking it in? Okay. So in a recent survey, we looked at different audience segments, and the centrists in that survey, one of the core groups of ideologically moderate women who we focus on, 62% said they oppose Trump's actions, but only 6% have taken action. 22% would like to take action but haven't done so. And the plurality, 34%, you can see that's the lightest shade of teal, said they oppose Trump's policies but wouldn't take action to oppose them. Right? So what you have is a lot of folks saying they oppose the actions, but not a lot of moderate women taking action. And we looked at why is that? So in our last webinar, we went and did an in-depth qualitative research study, and we shared that with you about what holds moderate women back from taking civic action in general. And if you'll remember, a lot of that was on fear of conflict. And we also did a deep dive into how do we get them to care and galvanize them to action. What I want to draw your attention to is if we hear these are the red lines, and then we see 62% saying they oppose what he's doing, but so few taking action, what can we learn about why they haven't, and what does that mean for us? So as a follow-up, we asked all the respondents who said they wouldn't take action, why not? At least half of all respondents said this is the reason why not. 72% said I am worried about, at least half said these were somewhat or very important. So 72% said I am worried about my safety. So a fear of personal safety that connects to fear of conflict and to actual physical harm. 73% said I don't think those civic actions will create change. So that's an agency question. 50% said, I am worried I will face consequences at work or in my personal life. And if you've been with us from the beginning, this is a constant thing. If this is what I do believe, but if I express this, I will have, there will be consequences, both social and economic. If people know this is how I feel, I will be penalized for it by my husband, my social group, and maybe even my employer, right? So we see half of them saying that here. And then just over half saying, I don't know how to participate in those actions. Interesting, right? Just very recently, we asked our audience about the No Kings rally. And so in our November survey, we said, what happened in October? Did you do the big No Kings rally? A plurality, 40%, said they supported those protests, but only 3% attended. So this is one of the reasons our engagement strategies with this audience are so important. We know that they generally care and are supportive of what we want them to see, standing up for democratic actions, peaceful protests. And we know what they're upset about, these red lines, but we also see that they need real support to stand up for their beliefs in the face of fear of conflict and negative consequences, right? So part of our job is to help them around how they view what's happening, to support them to take action. And it may not be a protest. It may just be talking to their friends about it, and it certainly needs to be voting in line with their values. So let's keep going a little bit more. And this next one, what we see is how we're taking all of this data and how that helps us to understand what we need to do to move moderate women and have the impact we need. First of all, we know that moderate women are not a monolith. We segment them to figure out which segments need which information. In this presentation, you've really heard two key themes, that there's two key types of programming that is needed. There's one, the women who aren't quite sure what they think about where we are in this moment. Those women need persuasion programming to help them sort through the noise, counter the mis and disinformation designed to trigger their fears, and help them clearly see who is to blame and who has their back. So that's kind of category one. Category two is for the women who are clear and who tell us, I oppose this, what's happening, and I actually would support this kinds of protest or this action, but so few of them will take the action. What can we do to support them to take even small actions in line with their values and their hopes for the future to help overcome their barriers to taking action and to chip away at the stuff that holds them back, and to make sure that we're supporting them to have the confidence and the community that will support them so that they can ultimately vote in line with those values and protect our democracy. We have successfully done both of these in the past, crafting messages and programming that meet the audience where they are on their values, focusing on the things that they care most about and helping to shape their perspective and their behavior. So for folks who aren't clear yet, our persuasion programming will meet them there at those values, shape perspective and positions. And then the folks who are clear, we're helping build up their confidence, support them to take action, even if those actions are small at first, to build up that civic behavior over time. What will be new in 2026 for Galvanize Action is how we're delivering that program. And so in just a minute, I'm going to talk about the expansion in our C4 work beyond paid ads. But before we do that, I want to just ground us by taking a look at the 2026 landscape in front of the midterms. The Republicans currently hold Congress by a thread. There's 219 Republicans to 213 Dems in the House. And in the Senate, it's 53 Republicans to 47 Dems. Democrats would need to focus on a small number of tight but winnable races to regain control of the House. And changing control of the Senate is a bit of a steeper climb with fewer competitive races in play, but it is not impossible. This map will continue to shift and evolve over the next several weeks and months. But this is a good at-a-glance picture of the current landscape, including the most competitive races that we've currently identified. And what you see here is, and you can see this from the coloring on the map, in the most competitive races we've identified, moderate white women make up at least 20 to 30% of the vote share. And that is in more than half of these competitive races, moderate white women are at least 20 to 30% of the vote share, right? And moving just 1 to 3% of moderate white women could be a decisive factor in these races. The House path runs straight through Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. That's our stomping grounds where we've been since day one, plus additional races to watch in Maine, Nebraska, Iowa, Arizona, Colorado, Ohio, and North Carolina. These are races that were decided by incredibly narrow margins in 2024 and in which moderate white women make up a large share of the district. So let me give you, I'll just take a look at Pennsylvania as an example. We're looking at Pennsylvania 7, 8, and 10. In each of those cases, the victory margin is just over 1 percentage point. So the Republican won in 7 by 1 percentage point, in 8 by 1.6, and in 10 by 1.2, right? And in each of those cases, it's under 7,000 votes. That's this very tight margin victory. And in each of those districts, moderate white women make up either 26 or 27% of the vote. So if there's under 7,000 votes that make the difference, and our audience is more than 20 times that number, we have proven in cycle after cycle that we can move moderate women in our content, with our content, and we have the opportunity to help do so in the House next year. The Senate landscape is an even tighter picture. There are close races in Michigan and Maine, along with Georgia, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa. And those races will decide if the Republicans stay in the majority or if the control of the Senate shifts to Democrats. Earlier this year, that felt out of reach to me. I think now, in the wake of what we've seen in the fall, we are seeing a shift with people reacting to what's happening with the economy, what's happening with the corruption, and there is an opening. It is by no means, I want you to join me. This is not going to happen on its own, but it is possible. All right, so let's look at how are moderate white women, if moderate white women could be decisive in so many of these elections, how are they telling us they feel about the midterms right now? On this next slide, what you see is last month we asked them, which of the following best describes your plan to vote in the 26 elections? What you see is while more of the women surveyed said they plan to vote Democratic, 38%, then Republican, 25%, nearly a quarter, 24%, said they are not sure yet how they'll vote. Don't be upset about that. It's an opportunity. That is a great opportunity. And an additional 14% say they do not plan to vote in the midterms at all. And so that becomes the possibility for a turnout option. These results really show us that there is opportunity to shape perspective and positions and room to improve turnout in advance of 26. And it is absolutely critical that we play our part to help regain the House, possibly regain the Senate, for the purpose of getting Congress to do its job. Democracy depends on the 3 separate branches of government. Congress is supposed to be an independent branch that provides oversight of the executive and pushes back against executive overreach that we are seeing happen right now. Congress has absolutely failed to do its job this year. They are not providing really a check on the abuse of executive power at all. This is not a normal midterm cycle. If you're someone who doesn't tend to get as involved in midterms, really think about this as this crucial period where we can push back against the authoritarian overreach and protect our democracy. It's a much more important midterm cycle than I've ever seen in my lifetime for our country to return to checks and balances. And so I'm really begging you to help me with your peers in not waiting till the end. Don't hold back. Don't be thinking about 28. We gotta address 26 if we want to have a hope here. So given all of that, how are we ready to meet this moment? All of our research, and validated by what we saw in the elections this fall, points to the narratives we need to be talking with our audience about. The economy. This is the majority of the content we'll be focused on because we're centering our audience, what they care most about, and that's going to be economic security, health, and safety. That is the number one thing. We put our audience at the center and we talk to her about what she's worried about. Then we're going to be contrasting that with their current reality. Who is helping them and who is not helping them? And what is going on with the government and the leadership? And when I reference corruption here, I'm talking about a focus. While folks can't buy their Thanksgiving dinners, there are gold toilets in the White House, right? What is the focus of the administration? Why are we seeing folks economically benefit themselves, protect their cronies, looking out for a certain class of folks, and absolutely ignoring the working people and what they need? So that focus on economy, and then the corruption and chaos and refusal to look out for our audience is how the narrative that we'll be focused on in 2026. And I reference this as corruption because focusing on that, the leader's desire to focus on enriching himself and his cronies, that kind of corruption has been key to countering authoritarianism throughout history. That is one of the main ways, focusing on economy and corruption, that we've seen authoritarians defeated. So let's look at how we are delivering these narratives. Our programming will include always-on content in folks' social media feeds. This is a shift for the Galvanize Action. We will be showing up where our audience already spends their time, delivering content they crave, that they will return to, and support them to act. This combination of popular and persuasive content delivers a mix of what we call like sugar and substance, and it leads with culture. We did this crazy amount of research this year to figure out where are they spending their time, what do they crave, what do they want, and what would fit with the messages we know they need. That is what we are delivering our C4 content in this year, and always on content in their socials. We're doing that as a reminder because we know culture is downstream. Politics is downstream of culture. We need to be connecting with them through culture first. The next thing we're doing is amplifying our messaging through creator cohorts. We'll be partnering with influencers who authentically speak to our target audience to infuse their content with our effective messaging on civic issues. We have a network strategy with other content creators and influencers to create a surround sound of the pro-social messaging that our audience needs to hear. That includes cross-promotion, shared messaging to exponentially increase our collective impact. That amplification is key to breaking through the noise and succeeding in a crowded landscape to defeat the propaganda and compete for our audience's attention. So amplified messaging is key, and our partnerships team is doing a fantastic job with partners on that. The third piece is paid ads. We will absolutely continue to do paid ads with trusted messengers. That has worked for us extraordinarily well in the past. It's a way that we can push our messaging to our audience to make sure, especially for those who are avoiding the news, who turn away from anything political, we have to be able to push the messaging to them. And the reason we've been so successful with paid ads in the past is because we create content that is authentic with trusted messengers that they do want to watch. So it doesn't look like your traditional political ad. It's content they want, they watch, and that we know has impact. Finally, a new thing this next year will be more rapid response to meet cultural and political moments. What we're going to be doing in 2026 is really move much more quickly with your support so that we can, when something, a cultural moment or a political moment is breaking through the noise and folks are paying attention to it, think Jimmy Kimmel, that we can strike in that moment to tie it to our narrative, take advantage of that attention and help shape perspective. So that's that final part, is the rapid response.
Okay, wonderful. I hope you all enjoy that. I see some questions that are coming in, and I just wanted to make sure that, see if we could highlight Jackie. Is she on yet? Or spotlight, any to call it?
I'm here. Hi.
Oh, great. Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for being here. This is my second time to watch your program, but I still like collect stuff and learn, and I so appreciate you being here and sharing with us all tonight. And everybody else, I want to say thank you for hanging in with us on our technical difficulties. you never know when they're going to happen. So anyway, so let's keep your questions coming in, and we'll get started on those now. So the first one that came in, or around the first one, is what is the definition of moderate for your purposes? Are they registered independent or unaffiliated, or how's that defined?
Sure. We do a really deep dive on data analysis, and we take the folks who are voting for or really affiliated with or entrenched on either side, and we cut them off. And then we look at the remaining audience, and then we say, of these folks who perceives themselves as moderate or independent, who is not firmly entrenched on one side or the other. And then we do another level to look at of that group, who do we feel like we can actually move and connect with? There's a segment of them, honestly, whose racial resentment is so high, doesn't make any sense for us to target them. We can't move them. And so we end up with a group of 49.5 million moderate white women. And then we're able to look at that across states and across congressional districts. I did want to share, if you don't mind, before we dive totally into the Q&A.
Yeah, sure.
First, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video and for having me come and talk to you. It's a delight to see all your faces, and I know there's a bunch more folks just listening in. I wanted to share with you that a couple of things have happened since I did this in December, and I really wanted to focus on the way that what's happening in Minnesota has broken through, and how the ICE killings of Renee Good and especially Alex Preddy have impacted moderate white women. So what we've been watching is how did they respond to that? And we are constantly doing research and surveys to figure out if this is a moment where things are breaking through. We use AI tools to track what's happening in social media, what actually breaks through, what are moderate women watching and paying attention to. Since they're so news averse, it's important to know what does break through and capture their attention. Minnesota absolutely captured their attention. When we did a survey immediately after the killing of Alex Preddy, what we saw was 61% of moderate white women said that they opposed what was happening with ICE and the killings of peaceful protesters. And then we held an emergency call a couple weeks ago. I mean, what year is it, right? A couple weeks ago, to kind of strike in that moment, as I talked about in December, how we were going to have more rapid response and look for the moments when we could leverage the opportunity, such as it is. And so we were able to go out and create 15 new pieces of content for moderate women based on their values and motivations, and then distribute that content. It's distributing now to 2 million moderate white women who most needed to see it. What we saw, so 61% said they opposed what ICE was doing. Another of those 51% said they thought there needed to be accountability, and about 14% said they weren't so sure. They were moderately convinced. So we're like, okay, that's an opportunity. You don't like what's happening. You're not sure what we should do about it, that there should be accountability. Let us come in, reinforce that this was wrong, help you align what side you want to be on, and call for accountability. And so I just wanted to let you know that as a follow-up to what I said in December, like that is what the real-time activity looks like with moderate women. Okay, let me go back to your question.
Thank you. That was going to be one of my questions. Like, okay, so a lot's happened since December.
Yeah.
So thanks for addressing that up front. I'm going to go through some of these other ones. So you explain that. So how does the new redistricting affect the House races on that slide that you had regarding the races you guys are watching?
Yeah, we have a whole list, and we tier them: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. What's not changed really is that our top tier are Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nebraska, Iowa in the House. As any other additional redistricting happens, we evaluate what's the likelihood, what's the margin of that race, how many moderate white women are in that district, and would we have the ability to determine the outcome of the race. So our team is looking at it constantly, but it hasn't changed really who the top tiers are for the House. And then the only real change on the Senate is the introduction of Alaska into the mix. And so that creates a little bit more opportunity for the Senate. Than I feel even a little more hopeful than I did when I made that in December.
No, fabulous. Okay, great. Thank you. And then what do you guys consider cultural content?
So cultural content is really about what we did this analysis that you heard last year. What are moderate white women looking at when they have time? Where are they spending their time and their attention? And then they look for, and that's mostly on social media or on television, right? And when we ask them and we track what they pay attention to, they're looking for how to how to hack economy. So DIY, cooking for my family, that kind of thing, right? How do I make my life work a little bit cheaper? So there's that piece. There's health and well-being, a lot of self-growth, and relationships kind of fit into there. There is just plain escapism, so quite a lot of celebrity content. So we look through what are they spending their time and attention on, and then we try to meet them there. And a lot of our content, you heard at the beginning of that presentation, we talked about what my C3, my Galvanize USA is doing with Dear Grace. So that's one of the best examples of cultural content. It's an advice column that we write for our audience, and we have over 1 million subscribers, and they write in and they're asking for help with, you know, how do I stretch a dollar? Or my husband won't pick up his socks. That's my favorite one. What do I do about that? And I'm like, sister, who hasn't been there? And then, how do I talk to my kids about ice? And sometimes we've seen women saying, like, I'm thinking about having an abortion. I'm not sure if I should. What should I do? Talking about leaving abusive husbands. I mean, the whole spectrum. So
Wow.
what that is then becomes a place that women want to read that and engage with it. Sometimes it feels sometimes it's a little voyeuristic, but it also feels familiar. They want to listen to or read that. Sometimes they get the help for themselves, but it's a really helpful format because it allows Grace to be an authority figure who offers advice, including pro-social advice. How should you deal with it if your neighbor is taken? Like, what should you do? And she becomes a trusted authority figure. And that's an example of cultural content.
That's so incredible because that's such a wide variety of who knows what's going to pop in here. Do you have is there like a committee that handles the responses or that kind of moderates the forum?
It's a team who helps to
Hmm.
write the responses. We select which questions get featured, and that's intentional so that we
Sure.
can say, well, every question we answer, no matter if it's about his socks or whatever it is, it's about building up her confidence and agency so that she feels like I can actually do something in my life. I can use my power. And then
Right.
included in those are ones that are intentionally, this will be good for helping them think about immigration. This one will be good for thinking about abortion. This will be good for thinking about democracy, right? But it has to be integrated into the other things that they feel are more pressing in their lives, which is
Sure.
much more about economy and relationships.
Sure. Can anybody subscribe to that? Like, is it on
Mhm.
Substack or where's, okay.
You
Well,
can subscribe. You can look at the Galvanize Together website.
okay, perfect. Galvanized together. Excellent. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back up to where we were. Done, done, done. How do the percentages in the how do you plan to vote compare to how moderate white women voted in the 2024 election? Like, did anything
Mm.
shift from 24 to 25?
Here's what's interesting in what we're seeing now, because so many of them, I think it's right now, the numbers are 26% say they don't know who they're going to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
So the so you can't look straight at what happened in 24, how many voted for Harris and how many voted for Trump, right? Because you've got that
Right.
26% saying they're not sure. But I think what's maybe more interesting to you all is we are now at a place in our most recent research, 61 or 62. 62% of moderate white women say they disapprove of Trump. And when we ask them about do you approve of how he's dealing with the economy? Do you approve with how he's doing on immigration? Do you approve with how he's doing on crime? On across the board, with the exception of crime, on every other measure, oh no, even on crime, they disapprove of how Trump is doing. A majority of moderate white women disapprove. So when you think about what position you would want to be in now, I'm very happy with how they're processing what's happening and that we do have 62% disapproval,
Mm-hmm.
and the majority saying they disapprove on every measure.
That's great. It's there's so much noise out there that it's hard to not hear it. So I'm glad that you guys are specifically working to break through and get it down to them.
Yeah.
What percentage of identified moderate women identify as Christian, and how does that influence your Georgia messaging?
Oh, such a good question. Um,
You
I don't know
might,
if the time. Oh, sorry.
you want me to turn this off? Actually, oh,
Way we can hear you.
That's okay. It
Okay.
happens. The a, about a quarter are evangelical. I'm trying to think if I know the exact number that are Christian. Um, it's it's quite a bit. I mean, one of the major themes we deal with is around faith, where it's a constant thing that's introduced from moderate women themselves. It's one of the challenges they face is when their pastor or faith leader is more conservative than they are, and that happens
Mhm.
quite a bit. And so they talk about the struggle they feel, the pressure they feel around that. And on the flip side of that, we're able to connect with on the positive side, really how they view their own faith and what it teaches them, what it tells them. One of the main things is they view themselves as very compassionate, and they also think that their faith teaches them not to judge others. So in the immigration context, we're able to to talk about compassion, right? And the caring for the stranger among us. There's a lot of really strong faith-based messages that work with women of faith around immigration. And then on abortion, when we were dealing with that after when Roe was destroyed. One of the things we talked a lot about was how women of faith were saying that they're not, it's a tough road. It's hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but their faith tells them not to judge another. And so that helps them to make a decision not to restrict someone else's access. So it's a way for us, it's always what are your core values, what will motivate you, and how can we connect into that to help you live into those values in the best, most pro-social way.
Wonderful. How have you guys reacted with the Epstein files, if at all?
Well, such an interesting question. I actually was just asking my research team today if they could refresh our data on that. The last time we asked moderate white women about Epstein was in October of 2025. And so, I mean, again, I'm like, what
Yeah.
month is that? So October. And if you remember what was happening then, there was a lot of mishigas going on where the Speaker of the House wouldn't swear in one of the members, and as a result, they wouldn't have the vote on Epstein, right? So
Right.
it was in the news and it was breaking through a little bit. The majority of moderate white women said they were unhappy with how the government was handling Epstein. And the majority said they wanted to see the Epstein files released with all of the files released with the victims' identities protected. Um, I'll tell you frankly that up until recently, I have been thinking I'm not sure how much this is going to matter for moderate women when it comes to vote choice, because affordability, economy is always the number one issue. Everything
Right.
else is on the periphery, right? And they're I think it's 57% of them are about one broken arm away from being in a financial crisis. So they
Right.
really, the number one thing is always going to be affordability for them, and healthcare affordability in particular. What I thought they would care about Epstein, but I didn't think they would care that much. The thing that's happening right now, or I should say, I didn't think it would determine their vote. The thing that's happening right now is, do you remember how in that video I talked about economy and corruption? And the corruption message was about why are the people in power protecting their cronies, right? And so initially that was in terms of who's getting released from prison, who's getting financial deals. But now the way that the Epstein story is unfolding is really starting to fit into that narrative. I mean, it may be obvious, but I'm making it clear that if you really kind of holding two things in your head, affordability and like chaos and corruption, and as opposed to safety and security, then you can start to see how Epstein and what's happening with the government so clearly protecting rich and powerful men instead of protecting innocent girls, it starts to feel like yet another thing that's going wrong in this country and how you
Right.
can't trust those in charge. And so I do think that the reason I asked the research team to refresh the research on that is because I think there is a narrative here that is taking hold, and partially because it's bipartisan. And I'm
Right.
grateful for Thomas Massey for that, Republican out of
Yes.
Kentucky, for actually using his position of authority to say, like, this is unspeakable what we're doing to these victims. So that it's bipartisan and it's sticking in the news, right, is a good thing for us.
Right. Good. Yeah, I can see how that totally fits in with corruption and cover up, et cetera. What is your perspective on the SAVE Act that passed the House last week or this week, whenever it passed, and its potential impact on moderate white women's as well as other women's ability to vote in the November elections and beyond? Not sure. I'm pretty. I don't know if it'll pass the Senate. I don't even know when they're bringing it up, but it's yeah.
So I was just thinking, is this recorded? I have to use my words carefully. How I feel about the SAVE Act. So look, right, the SAVE Act, it's this same language has been around literally for 30 years,
hmm
where they've been trying to say, let's make sure you have to prove you're a citizen in order to vote, right? The impact of that language will very clearly affect. There are 69 million women who have changed their names in this country
hmm
upon getting married, and about half of Americans don't have a passport. So if you're one of the 69 million women who changed your name and you don't have a passport, you're going to have a hard time voting if this law passes. So women are, that's who would be affected by it. You would think that if I was a Republican, I would think, oh, maybe I don't want to do that, because what that means is a lot of women who are not passport holders, you might think that they'd be more likely to vote Republican. They're married women are more likely to vote Republican, right?
hmm
Without passports are expensive, $130 at least. So you have to think about who you're impacting there. But they clearly are making the bet that they're trying to stack the deck and trying to restrict uh, who they imagine will be more Democratic voters. I'm curious to see how much backlash they get from Republican women about having their voting access restricted.
Right, right. Especially since, the last few elections anyway, it's always 52% white women voting for them. So if they cut us out, it seems cut your nose off, spite your face kind of thing. Um, can you share some real life examples of some of your messaging?
Okay, well, so the Minnesota example, that's the freshest. Uh, when we watched what happened in Minnesota, as you saw in this video, we're looking at red lines, and
hmm
throughout all 2025, moderate women said, a red line for me would be if the military used lethal force against a peaceful protester. That's so when
mm
Renee Good was murdered, there was some question about, was she a peaceful protester? Did she bring this on herself? So there's some story around that. When it happened a second time with Preddy, first of all, it was the second time, right? So if you had
Right.
any doubts about Renee, the second time was this, just shocking that it happened again. And then I think the video it was a little bit more like he was an innocent victim for some folks. Because one of the things we definitely heard from moderate women was, well, if they just had followed the rules, this wouldn't have happened to them, because they're
Right.
very big rules followers. When they saw Preddy, they thought, this is not right. So what we created an ad that was based on the rules, right? And so the ad basically says, and the imagery when it starts is the Constitution, and it says we live under a set of rules in America, and most days we don't think about it at all. We're taking care of our family and looking out for our neighbors, right? And that's a reality for folks. What they care most about is taking care of their family. But when those rules are broken, and we see the ICE, doing this behavior, it makes us less safe, which our data shows they feel much less safe with ICE now. Their towns feel less safe, and it robs us of our fundamental freedoms. And because this audience are rules followers, and because they're also very patriotic, and they want to see the fundamental freedoms protected, that kind of a response in the moment is going to be the most powerful response for moderate women, right? There's a million ways you could have done it. And that would work for different segments. That was a way that worked particularly well for moderate women.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Let's see, we'll get through. I guess we maybe just have one more. The voters you are targeting, do they take their feelings out of, their feelings about Trump and apply them to Republicans broadly, or to their representatives specifically? Or is he a segment and then the rest of the GOP is, it's separate?
I'll give you a data-based answer. So in the most recent research, we asked them, whose policies do you trust more on a whole series of things? Do you trust the Democrat more or the Republican more? And we also asked them, another way of asking it is, are Democrats about right in how they deal with this, or are Republicans about right in how they deal with this? And we're trying to gauge, do I feel like their values are aligned with me? Do I trust them to look out for me? And what we saw in the most recent research was on every issue except crime, they thought more moderate women thought Democrats were more aligned with their values and their policies than Republicans were. So what you're seeing is more alignment with Democrats now than we've seen in the past. And it's interesting because that's even on economy, right? And normally moderate women, I think Republicans are going to be better for them on the economy. But when we asked that question, they thought that more of them thought that the Democrats were better on it. So what we're starting to see is some shift, which for those of us who have been worried about the Democratic brand is nice to see.
Excellent. I love hearing that. So I think we'll do this as the last question. How many women do you poll to gather your statistics, and how do you reach them? Text, phone, etc.
It depends totally on, we use a whole combination of things to diversify our data, and we do so much polling so that we can check so that it's different samples most of the time. We do some longitudinal studies. So like in 24, we did a 6-month study of 6,000 women that we worked with a firm to randomly sample them. And in that case, we treated 3,000 of the women and we control grouped 3,000 of the women. So we could look really rigorously at that. And in that case, we used a firm to do the random sample collection. And we pay those women so that they stick with us over time. So it's the same sample over time, which is a better look than what we do in another way, which is say like, okay, now we're going to do 600 or 1,000 women every month, and we're going to ask them this set of questions. And then we're looking as you can't tell that this woman changed over time, but you can see that the sample changed over time.
Gotcha.
And so that's a piece of how we do it. We also do precinct level randomized control trials, which is truly the gold standard of an analysis. And so we did that in Nebraska in 2024. And if you ever want to see that totally nerd out data, you can go into that with me.
Wonderful. Thank you. We are super grateful for you tonight coming on, Jackie, and giving us updates on it. Could you tell us how we can continue to support Galvanize Action?
I would love it. A couple things. One is I just gave you a preview of some of our hot off the press research. We're going to do another webinar like you just saw in December. I'd love for you to sign up to come to that one, and you'll get the most up-to-date research and new content shown to you. So that, it's in March 26th, maybe. We'll put it on there. It's Galvanize Action /events. If you would consider hosting that with us, we ask people to sign up as co-hosts and then just to help invite others. Yeah. I'm actually going to be coming to Colorado in probably in July. I was just talking to Susan Daggett about that, and I know I have some other friends on this call that are Women for Bennett. And so like if you're interested in supporting us when we come out, we're going to be doing a fundraising trip in Colorado in July. And then obviously, if you are able to financially support us, we have so much money to raise for Galvanize Action. And on the Galvanize Action website, there's a donate page. And I would, you're making me feel so delighted by your comments. I love the like, go get him, sister, and all that. Thank you. I need that to keep going. And
Yes.
if you can, if there is an opportunity to provide us financial support or friend raising, that would be the most helpful.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again. I don't think I had any other questions for you guys. March is a very busy meeting month for us, but we will do our best. And at a minimum, I can, maybe we can do the actual co-host because I know how that system works and I've been on it multiple times. And then we can figure out, I can, shoot it out to our network and go from there. So we will definitely take a look at that. And again, thank you so very much, Jackie, for all of your just for your passion on it. It's so needed, and we appreciate all of your work. And Co, thank you for getting this to all work. So, and thanks to everybody guest wise for being patient with us. I appreciate it. We look forward to working with you again in the future. So thank you. Keep up the
Likewise.
good work. Yeah.
You too.
Wonderful.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
So everybody else, I hope you enjoyed it. I even for the second time for me, it was just incredible the amount of work that they do and how they hone in and it's questions that I always get asked, well, what are we going to do about these ladies? So there's people out there doing it so we can support them, which is wonderful. I always ask you to please consider joining the Boulder County Dems as a donor. That's the process of how we get our votes out. And they can always use precinct organizers. And then don't forget caucus on March 7th. Please get involved. It's really democracy at the absolute grass level. You're with your neighbors and friends, etc. So please consider doing that. And then I want to announce our May meeting, which will be in person at the Avalon. But we're going to do a book club like we did about a month, year and a half ago, where we have a book that's selected and the author will present the book and we'll have questions, I believe, ahead of time. So I'm giving you notice now so you can get the book and read the book by May 20th. And the rate of my reading this days is I already ordered it, so so I can have it done by May. The book is called, well, let me get to this other, here we go. So save the date, May 20th. It's Dr. Loretta J. Ross. She's a nationally acclaimed scholar, human rights leader, and author of Calling In, How to Start Making Change with Those You'd Rather Cancel. And you don't have to write all this down if I'm saying it too fast, because there will be an email going out tomorrow or Friday with this information. But so you'll join us there, and then she will be online Zooming in. She's a MacArthur Fellow and co-founder of the Reproductive Justice Movement, lifelong advocate whose work has shaped national conversations on equity, accountability, and social justice. And we're absolutely honored that one of our board members, Helen, was able to connect with her and bring her on. We'll have more details coming out this week on it. I got my book at bookshop.org. And it was about $8 cheaper than Thrift Book. So those two are new places, relatively new places to me to find books. She also, I'm not sure if she's still at Smith, but she was a professor at Smith for a long time. So I think it'll be a great book to learn how we talk with, the moderate white women and just even some of our people in our own families and friends, etc. So thank you all again for being here and for your patience. Look forward to seeing you next month for Jason Crow and a caucus review. And as always, if you ever have any questions, just send us an email at info@demwomenboco.org. And I thank you all. And look at that, 7 o'clock. All right. Have a great evening.